taking a look at images of Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old. She's been missing now for more than a week. She's the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. And for the very latest on this investigation, including a deadline that authorities are keeping their eyes on, we want to bring in former NYPD detective Mike Alzacar, who's also a professor at John Jay College. He's joining us by Zoom. And Mike, can you hear us? Okay, 1 second. We just bring up your audio, make sure we have you there. Mike, you got us correct, right?
I got you.
Okay, Mike, thank you so much for being with us. And again, we're talking about the very latest on this case. And just to bring everybody up to speed, I know you already know this. A first deadline that was mentioned in one of the alleged ransom notes had a deadline Friday at 5 p.m. The second deadline that was mentioned from the people who are believed to be holding Nancy Guthrie captive is 5 p.m. today. So, Mike, when we talk about situations like this, and in a case that's high profile like this, the first deadline has happened. The second purported deadline is today. Can you just talk about law enforcement's perspective now? We know that they're searching, but when you have approaching deadlines like this, just walk us through what this means impactfully for law enforcement.
Yes, from a hostage negotiator perspective, it's important that we have direct communication with the abductors. And I think that's why the first deadline was missed, right? A message was sent out, they made demands, and then they set this deadline, but there was no communication.
Okay, Mike.
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, so,
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. You were saying.
yes. So there was no direct communication. They're just sending out messages, and then Savannah is sending it out on Instagram to acknowledge the message. So if this deadline is approaching today, I'm sure the FBI is looking for, again, for direct communication. Now, that very well could be happening right now. They could be doing negotiations right now, and we're just not privy to that information. So they're waiting for that, or they're doing that right now.
Mike, one of the things also I wanted to just follow up on with that. So there was mentioning over the weekend and late last week in circumstances like this that it's rather odd. Some thought that the family has more or less not heard directly from the people who are supposedly holding captive Nancy Guthrie. Meaning like you have these two alleged ransom notes, that the authorities are still, trying to corroborate and verify authenticity, but they have to treat them as serious, and that's how this is how they are proceeding there. But is it or is it odd at all to not have contact or communication between the person who's supposedly holding someone captive and the family that they're trying to seek an alleged ransom from?
Yeah, I'm sure the family and the FBI, they want to make sure that these abductors do in fact have Nancy Guthrie, right? They want to be able to produce the victim. They were asking for proof of life in the first message, right? Some kind of image, video, phone call, anything to communicate with Nancy to get the status of her health. It was very telling, of course, in the last message that Savannah sent out, that they weren't even asking for proof of life. She just responded by saying that she understands. To me, that signals that the abductors demanded something, and Savannah is saying that she understands, that she's acknowledging whatever they requested, she understands. So there's a few things that happened in that message that we could decipher, but yeah, it's very odd. We need to know that you can actually produce the victim.
Which also was one of the things that is certainly among the conversations being held in newsrooms and anyone who has an interest in just trying to see what is happening with this. That landscape, that terrain out there, also problematic. Mike, can you just weigh in, because we're talking about the desert, we're talking about hills. I spent 4 years in Phoenix. I know that landscape similarly, even though Tucson is about 90 minutes south of Phoenix, but the desert landscape is certainly problematic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're going to require the help of lots of agencies to search that area. I mean, the general rule is when you have a crime scene, you want to make it as big as possible. And then when you rule out information or you recover evidence, then you can make it smaller. And in that case, I don't know how big they could have made that crime scene, as evidenced by them returning to that crime scene a few times, right? To me, that signals that there was some missteps there. That's why they had to go to the sister's house. They had to go to the roof of Nancy's residence. They had to check her backyard. They had to check that septic tank. So I feel like they miss a couple of things they should have checked initially.
Mike, one of the other things I want to ask you about, this came out late last week at one of the news conferences from the Pima County Sheriff's Department, and they were saying that even though investigators have determined that the front doorbell camera is missing, and they were waiting to check the server, the software, because it detected an image to some degree. One of the terms that have since come up since that news conference is the term unseen data and what that might look like in regards to images that or information that's on software like that. Mike, just from your own knowledge of that, do, are those images recorded on the software? Do the cameras talk like that? Do you are you familiar with unseen data? And if so, how does that impact what's going on now?
I think, I'm not an expert, but for my limited information on that, what I believe is that perhaps something was recorded temporarily, and then if you don't download it, it disappears. Now, I don't know how long the duration of that is, uh, but apparently there was something detected, even though the camera was removed.
Mike, and I imagine that's probably one of the things that, certainly frustrating, investigators as they're trying to do this. Just from a detective perspective, Mike, from your own background and your pedigree in law enforcement, how frustrating is it for the detectives when they know they have all of the eyes on this? You're talking about any person, whomever it could be, regardless of the age, but, the life-saving medication, the health implications, in this particular case. Can you just weigh in just on perhaps the frustration that's impacting investigators? They've been at it for more than a week now.
Yeah, I know these investigators are invested in it. I've been invested in cases where I felt helpless. I'm sure they're doing everything, their due diligence in the background that we're not even privy to, right? They're conducting an investigation, but I'm sure it's frustrating that they're getting these messages and there's no way for them to contact or communicate with the kidnappers. So, that's a big hurdle. Hopefully they get that today. Hopefully there's some kind of communication, because as a negotiator, there's no negotiations if we're not talking to them. So that for me is the biggest part of the frustration in this evidence, in this case, I should say.
Mike, you're also a professor at John Jay. Will you just tell us about the courses or which curriculum it is that you also are teaching and lecturing on?
Yeah, I work at John Jay College as an adjunct professor. I teach in the criminal justice department. Lots of my courses have to do with law enforcement, so investigative techniques, patrol functions, ethics. They gave me something that has nothing to do with law enforcement. I teach statistics, but mostly geared towards people that are looking to go into the law enforcement arena.
I asked you that because I was curious if you had worked this particular national case at all into any of your lecturing, if it's been come up with any of your students. Have you been able to, I don't want to say teach in real time, but use this, have you been able to work this into, I guess, the courses? Why I was asking specifically about that.
I mean, I don't specifically talk about it in
Hmm.
my lecture because the curriculum is set. But if I have a student that has a question, I will entertain it. Again, I have to give them the caveat that it's all speculation on my part because we are limited in the information that the FBI, the investigators have. I'm not working with the evidence that they have. So again, it's all speculation and just an educational guess for me.
All right. Retired NYPD Detective Mike Alcazar, professor of criminal justice at John Jay College of Criminal Justice on the city's west side. Mike, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your insight, just, perspective, as we are certainly all just trying to see what the latest information is coming out on this case. But there's a lot of vested interest, from a lot of perspectives on this. And we certainly thank you for sharing your information and your background with us.
Thanks, Antwan.